Hello, guys. How are you doing? Please apologize. We had some technical problems with the audio, but now we are running. So here we are. This time I'm alone. Marcel is not here, unfortunately. He's got COVID. Yeah, thing's still here, and we are struggling, to get all healthy. And oh, sorry, just a second. And well, we hope he'll get better soon and join us again. But fortunately, today's episode is about bass, and I tried to be a bass player, so I think I'm comfortable enough to do a video about guitar pedals with bass. So what's the thing all about? On my personal experience, when I was starting, experimenting with sounds, effects, it was hard to me, to get some pedals. Well, obviously, I was a teenager, I had no money, so I borrowed, stuff from friends, and also, well, my father was a musician, and he had this, I don't know, it's a effects rack from Roland, GP8, I think it was called, and it was a guitar effects processor, and it had only guitar, effects. And the first thing I noticed, well, I was enjoying a lot, but when I used distortions, especially, all the low end kind of dropped. And when I was trying to play, with the songs that I liked at that moment, I felt that, there's no low end. It sounds kind of weak, and that got me, into investigate what was the thing with the effects, with bass effects pedals, and then when I had, when I was lucky to try bass pedals, I found out, that's why they're specifically designed for bass. And more things about it. Well, we've brought this selection of pedals. Some are for guitar, some are for bass, and some, they work for guitar and for bass too. And the first thing that I want to start is, well, we brought also the three basses. This is a P bass, 65 original P bass. It's really beautiful and it sounds amazing. We've brought this Music Man Stingray 5-string, which is interesting because it has a preamp, it's an active bass, and later we'll talk about, that's what's the difference. And we've brought that one too. It's a 60s, I don't know the exact year. Doesn't matter. It's an EB3, EB3, EB something from Gibson. Kind of a 335 guitar, but with 4 strings. And the first thing that I want to talk about is about distortion. That's where you kind of feel the most about the difference between guitar and bass pedals. The thing is that when you distort a signal, you kind of compress it and you process it in many different frequencies, right? There are some pedals that the first thing that they do internally in its circuitry is to narrow the frequency spectrum, to saturate only that select frequencies to make it sound tighter, if that's the word. And especially with guitar pedals, that makes that the low end, it kind of drops. There's no low end, it sounds weak, And we brought this Dunlop fuzz face, silicone one. We've brought this woolly mammoth from Zibex. It's specifically designed fuzz for bass. We've brought this rat. This is late 80s, I think, with the famous chip, the LM308. It sounds great. And we brought this Juggernaut bass rat from Proco. This is the specific unit designed for bass, and which is interesting is that it has a mix knob, so you can mix the signal of the saturated effect and the clean signal. So, starting with the fuzz face and the woolly mammoth, that's the first pair that I want to compare, is that the fuzz face, when it was designed, there wasn't such a thing as a pedal industry. I think it was like the third pedal that existed in the world, or the first design. And the thing is that for the technology that it was in that era, it had only just 2 germanium transistors, and they wanted to make it saturate a lot with less components, right? So the first thing is that it has a really low input impedance. And what that means is that it loads the pickups, right? It takes all the energy from the pickups to make the circuit saturate the most, right? And another thing of it is that, the way that there wasn't such an industry or a pedal market, it was focused more on guitar, right? And to make it saturate on the most hearable, I don't know if the word exists, frequencies, it just that kind of idea of narrowing the frequency spectrum, so it saturates a lot of the mid range and treble content. So let's hear it. This is a clean tone. Here's the clean again. So as you can hear, perhaps, well, I have to say, it's better to listen this live show with proper headphones or good speakers, because the bad ones, they don't reproduce the bass frequencies that well. So if you compare it again, if you listen alone, you can hear there's some bass to it, obviously, because you're playing with a bass. But the really low content kind of disappears. And if you're playing with a band, with a drummer and with a guitar player and everything, you will feel that the most. Like suddenly you disappear. There's no this low end, this bodiness, right? And that's why a guy named Chuck Zwicky designed this pedal, the Woolly Mammoth. The Woolly Mammoth wasn't a Zebex design. It was designed by another engineer. I think it was a recording engineer who noticed that playing, I don't know, with a fuzz face or with a vintage fuzz, and he noticed that it wasn't there wasn't like any kind of low end, right? So the Woolly Mammoth is basically a fuzz face, on its roots. It has the two transistor design, but it has a pair of tricks. It has this pinch knob, and it has this EQ knob, which the original fuzz face didn't have. So let's start with the pinch knob all the way down, and the EQ 12 o'clock. And you will hear the difference. So here's the clean sound with the fuzz face. And then the Woolly Mammoth. Again, the fuzz face. The difference is enormous. It's huge. Suddenly, when you put the Woolly Mammoth, it feels like there's more low end even into the bass tone, and also because of this, you can notice the difference between the fuzz phase and the clean sound. Because when you plug the fuzz phase or you engage it, and it's not that bad. But when you're using a specifically designed fuzz for bass, you really notice that. And talking about more features about the Woolly Mammoth, here's the pinch knob. it acts like kind of a compressor. What it really does is to squeeze the signal and acts kind of a pulse width modulation knob that you will find on some synthesizers. It's really interesting, and in fact, it makes your bass sound kind of like a bass. Sorry, a synthesizer. Again, with the pinch knob all the way down. It's really interesting. And also it has the EQ knob, which is brighter. And there's no treble. So here's the first thing. Talking about especially fuzz pedals, you should get, if you're playing with bass, you should get a specifically designed fuzz pedal. And another thing that I want to talk about is the thing that those pedals have this very low input impedance. They are designed to use them with a passive instrument, right? When you plug an active instrument, this is what happens. Let me change this. Right. Right. This is the Music Man. It sounds brighter, right? Because this instrument has a very low output impedance. It has a very bright sound because of the preamp, but it has a lot of energy, so it drives even more the fuzz circuit, right? And if you compare with the Woolly Mammoth, what happens is that it sounds like being more brutal. Kind of it squishes the tone, right? Because of the energy of the tone, of the signal. But another thing is that when you try to use the pinch knob, which interacts with the the output impedance of the pickups, it doesn't react the same way, and the tone gets thinner. It's not that useful, right? This is the bad thing. The good thing about using a vintage-inspired fuzz pedal with an active bass is that, especially with these fuzz phase-oriented circuits, it kind of makes the gain knob more useful. Gain or fuzz knob, whatever. If you turn it down, you retain this high frequency, right? You can hear the string. It's kind of more aggressive. Let me compare with the P-Bass again. Sorry. There you go. So as you can hear, if you lower the gain knob on a vintage fuzz pedal of this kind of circuits with a passive instrument, it kind of gets muddy. It's not that useful for me, right? All the way up. It's bright, and then, for example, at 12 o'clock. There's some clipping around there, but the rest is like a muddy tone. There's no definition, which could be useful in some situations. But using with an active bass, for me, it's like more versatile. Let's say it this way. Right. So that's the thing about fuzz pedals. You can use guitar fuzz pedals, but definitely you will lose all the low end. There are some cases like, for example, the Big Muff. There's a lot of versions of that circuit, and some bass player or most of them they do prefer to use the Russian versions because they have less gain, and the thing is that the higher the gain, the more compressed tone you will get. So Big Muff with less distortion will create a more open tone saturation, and that will let the bass content pass through to the circuit. That's why, well, in my opinion, that's why some bass players prefer to use the Russian versions, right? So another thing, the wah pedals. It's not a very common effect for a bass player because most of the time the wah is used for rhythmic, funky guitars, but especially for soloing. And in rock music, there's no that much bass soloing. Of course, you get Les Claypool and some Rush stuff and many others, but. I brought wah because a very famous intro of Black Sabbath. I think the song is NIB, if I recall, and it's there's that intro with bass, which I think is. I brought it back because on that era there wasn't such a thing as a bass wah, so I guess he used a regular guitar wah pedal. But definitely you can hear that when he's using the wah pedal, there's almost no bass content. There's almost no low end, and you'll hear that with that pedal. This is another CVX pedal that I really like. It's a wah probe, and it's very interesting because instead of a rocking pedal with a potentiometer, it has this copper plate which acts like a theremin. So the way you can use it is with anything, with your foot, with your hand, with your cell phone, whatever. The closer you get into the copper plate, that light lights up, it acts like the rocking pedal on a regular wah-wah. So here's the clean tone, and then. So with the imaginary rocking pedal all the way down, the tone, it's really interesting, but you also lose some low end. Bypass. So for certain parts, it'll be could be interesting, but there's one wah pedal specifically designed for bass made by Dunlop. I think, well, it's a white one. I don't remember the name. I think it's 535 bass or something. And they tweaked the circuit to make it more suitable for bass. Even though, when you rock the pedal, you'll notice that there's some low end dropping. Yeah. And moving on to more saturation stuff, I brought this pedal, the Rat, because it's not exactly a fuzz. It's a saturation, well, it's more like a distortion, but you can get some overdrivey tones. And it happens exactly the same. You don't have this impedance issue with this circuit because it's more modern. It's based around op amps, not around single transistors or discrete technology. And I've seen some people using the Rat for bass. In fact, I recall that I saw a band like 10 years ago or something, which they were called the Mongoloids. It's not the bass name, I think. They were kind of a hardcore punk band, and the bass player used a Rat all the time. I think there wasn't a single moment that he bypassed the pedal, and I bought the record and also I listened that distortion. You know, the tone was great, but there wasn't that low end, right? So this is why I brought this vintage Rat, because I have this one, the Juggernaut, which solves the bass thing with a mix control, which in fact many bass players use this solution to. They have, you know, a split signal with the distortion or saturated or processed signal, and then they have the other one which is clean, so you keep the low end, right? So I'm gonna compare this Rat with the Juggernaut, and you will see that when you use this single Rat with no mix, there's almost no low end, especially when you play with a band. I have to recall that because if you listen alone, perhaps you may think that it wasn't that bad, but when you play with a band, with an amp, you'll really notice that. So here's the clean tone again. I can turn the distortion up to lower. This is when you get into the overdrive territory. If you play with a big, you know, you can simulate this saturated amp tone. But also you notice that there's a bit more of low end drop. You can turn the filter or tone up a bit more, so you attain these high frequencies, but you know, again, there's no low end. I can turn the volume up to match. No, it's just mid-range and high end. So there you go. You got the Juggernaut, right? Which is basically a regular Rat pedal with a blend control. They call it mixed, but you can say mix, blend, whatever. And it has also an effects loop. I don't know if you can see it, but there's an in and out, which can serve as a send return. You can say send return too. And let's compare it. So I'm gonna put the mix control all the way down to the distortion, so there's no clean signal, and I'm gonna dial the controls the same way as the other Rat. I have to mention this one sounds like really nice. This is an reissue made in the USA, but it doesn't sound the same. I don't know if the circuits are different. I don't think so, but definitely there's some difference. They don't sound like anything close. So, the vintage one. Let me turn the tone a bit brighter. Yeah, it should be modified because there's a little bit more low end on the Juggernaut. But the trick is, when you turn the mix knob a little bit, find that low end. And dynamics too, because of the saturation or the overdrive, you lose a lot of the dynamics. So you play you play soft. There's kind of there isn't that much difference than if you play hard in terms of volume. With just distortion, the volume stays the same as just more dynamics. So here's the rat with clean signal. The vintage one. The Juggernaut with clean signal too. For me, this one sounds better, but you know, the low and drop makes it useless for live situation, especially if you use it alone with no, you know, this kind of wet dry setup, right? So that makes it all for the distortion side of the video. So another thing is the pedals that treat, you know, pitch shifting, octave, all that kind of stuff. You have to take a look to two things. This one, the Boss OC2, wasn't meant as a guitar pedal, but it wasn't meant as a bass pedal too. It wasn't, you know, to give you an octave below on monophonic signals, right? But the fact that this one is analog it matters because, you know, the kind of technology that drives these pedals is some way erratic. So the lower the note you play, the harder it would make the pedal to detect the actual note you are playing, right? It depends on many other things. It depends on the harmonics of the note, you know, the area of the strings that you're playing, the pickup that you're using. But for me, you know, the analog octave pedals sound better, but they make, you know, they have difficult times to detect the note. I'm gonna try to reproduce some mistracking on with this pedal, but you know, the whole thing is that perhaps with an octave pedal, I would recommend you to use a specifically designed octave pedal. Well, let's use it again. It sounds great. This is, well, I think it's one of the favorite octave pedals for a bass player. It was made, you know, it became famous because of some dubstep and reggae players. Yeah, I think the setup they used was an almost no clean signal, 1 octave below and 2 octaves below. Perhaps this way. Right? So here's the case. If I play a low E, you know, it plays like 3 different notes. This is because of the harmonics of the actual note that you are playing, right? And it happens too on higher strings and higher notes. Here we go. Let me hear. As you can hear, there's 2 different harmonics sounding. And that makes the octave pedal think that there's 2 different notes playing at once. You know? Here the note is clear, so it stays octave more time. Yeah, it only misses this note. Well, you can use this glitchiness on your benefit, you know, for experimenting. And another thing that I want to tell you is this won't happen with digital octave pedals because they rely on completely different technologies and they're more accurate. The bad thing is that they do not sound the same. They sound like a bit more artificial, let's say it this way. Most bass players, you know, because they play, you know, monophonic bass lines or monophonic notes or melodies, they do prefer analog octave pedals because, you know, they sound fuller, with more body, even more aggressive. But the thing is, if you use a 5-string for this pedal, let me pick this one. With the B string, you know, it's kind of a mess. I don't know if you can hear. There's almost no difference. Here's the clean one. It fattens it a little bit, but you know, the pedal isn't able to detect the note and reproduce this note an octave lower. I think there's no frequencies. It will be like minus 100 hertz or something. As you see, it misses the note. This kind of pedals, you have to play, you know, you have to play for the pedal, you know, to make it detect the right note. If you play softer, it detected all the notes, but if you play harder, there you go. Well, you can make some funny sounds with that too. Right, so the thing with modulations, as soon as you start, you know, leaving apart all the dynamic stuff and saturation, you can get more creative with for guitar pedals, because, you know, they don't have to deal with this frequency processing stuff, and they do not need to, you know, sound tighter for a specific use. So the thing with modulations is that pretty much you can use anything with the bass. There are some pedals that they are specifically designed for bass, like for example this CE2B from Boss, which is the same as the CE2. This one, this is a Weathercraft. This is a newer one. This is a vintage one. And but basically, it's like the exact pedal, but with a level control, right? It has this mix knob. You can call it mix. On the original CE2, there's no mix knob, just depth and rate. But let me play with both of them, and you'll hear some differences. I like the Boss C2B for some stuff, but I like the guitar version better for other things. So here's the clean tone. It's subtle. Let me turn the effect level up. And let's compare it to the guitar version. And can hear more effect on the guitar version, but I don't know exactly why circuit-wise, because on the bass version, if you turn the effect level all the way up, it's like there's no effect mix knob, right? The setting internally is the same as the guitar version, but they do sound different. Yeah, for me, the bass version is always a bit more subtle. So, for example, if you're using distortion, that will be useful, right? So let me put this bad way. So, for example, with the big. Guitar version. It's way too much if you compare it. There is much more effect on the guitar version, and for cleaner tones, I will prefer the guitar version, and for saturated ones, I would prefer the bass version. Yeah. And by the way, I think you can almost see the light on this bass version, the vintage one, and this is because this pedal was designed to use it with another kind of power supply. This is kind of the focus of this video, but let me explain. This one, as you can see, it has this sticker there that says Boss ACA, right? The older Boss pedals were designed to be used with an unregulated power supply, which spit out around 12 volts, right? So the thing was that internally in the pedal, there's a small regulator part of the circuit that made the voltage kind of uniform, stable at 9 volts. So the LED takes the energy from that part of the circuit, and if you power the pedal with 9 volts, there's a small voltage drop that make the LED a little bit dimmer. So we can, with a very sunny or with a lot of light situation, you will find that you can barely see the light engage, but this is not a problem. The pedal is not broken, and also it can be modified. You don't need to use them with a 12-volt power supply, and this applies to many Boss pedals. Especially the earlier ones until, I don't know, perhaps early 90s. Yeah, I think this one is from early 90s because it's made in Taiwan. Yeah, Taiwan. So this is the modulation stuff. This also applies on tremolo, phaser, univibe. Well, in fact, the univibe takes a little bit of low end too. It won't be an effect, so much suitable for a bass, but it sounds interesting. I recommend you to try it. So next thing, I don't know if you have any questions. No questions at all. Well, feel free to ask anything. So, the delay, right? With the delay, the thing is, this is an analog one. Well, this is a special version of the carbon copy, which they say bright, because the repeats sound a little bit brighter, but it's not like a digital delay, which every repeat sounds like a copy of the original note plate. And the thing is that analog delays, they need to, not compress, well, they also compress the signal, but they need to take apart of all unnecessary frequencies of the signal. This is because, that's because, all the repeats sound like muddy and with a lot of high end. Because of the chip, it can reproduce all that frequencies, right? So with every delay, analog delay, not echoes, not tape echoes, all that kind of stuff that we're in a different technology, but all the solid state analog delay pedals work on that chips, and you will find with pretty much everyone that, you know, there's almost no low end on the repeats, right? But that makes it easier for you know, for in the musical, you know, kind of point of view, to differentiate the clean signal from the affected one, right? So it's interesting to play with a 5-string clean tone. Well, it has a nice amount of low end with the shorter range. One thing that you have to have in mind is that, especially with active basses, you got to be careful because you can saturate that chips and, you know, the PBD, which they are called, the delay chips, because you can make them saturate. You play hard. I'm gonna turn the bass control EQ. Range. Well, in fact, this one sounds pretty clean. So that's it. With delays, you don't have to worry that much. In fact, I don't know if there's any specifically designed delay pedal for bass. I don't think so. If you guys know anyone, yeah, write it on the comments. Also, I wanna talk about, guys, about the Black Friday, because tomorrow is Black Friday, and we are doing a 10% discount on all Aclam products except for the guitars. We have some guitars listed on the website. The 10% discount, it doesn't apply, and it starts tomorrow, Friday. You know, Black Friday, it starts on Friday until next Monday. I don't know if it's 29. I don't remember, whatever. But until Monday, you'll have a 10% discount applied, and I recommend you to grab some stuff because it's a pretty nice offer. And also, if you want to subscribe and you like this kind of content, click the subscribe button and the bell button and all that YouTube stuff that I don't remember because I'm a player and I'm not a YouTuber, as you can see. And so, well, the reverb, you know, the reverb applies pretty much the same as to the delay pedals. There is such a big difference between the clean signal and the affected one. And the thing that pretty much on every delay and reverb pedal you will hear the clean signal plus the affected one. It makes it easier, you know, to design a pedal that will be suitable for all kind of instruments. In fact, for example, this one, this Strymon Big Sky, there's a lot of users who, you know, apply it to synthesizers and vocals and all that stuff that have a, you know, higher frequency spectrum. So the thing with reverbs, you know, my advice is to enjoy them, you know. Use and experiment as much as you can and try different pedals, because pretty much every pedal will be suitable for your instrument. And for example, this is this preset I made earlier. Oh, sorry. With the low B. Turn mix up. checks the notes. You can mix it with Woolly Mammoth, for example. So another thing I want to talk about is you don't have to limit yourself for well, you know, that low and drop stuff, because there's also some solutions for that. For instance, here's this Boss line selector, which is you know, fairly reasonably priced pedal that lets you do exactly what the delays and the juggernaut and the reverbs do. That is to mix the original signal, the clean one, with the affected one. So, for example, if you like this rat because it sounds rat with a D, not with a T, and you're worried about, you know, all the mix knob and blend stuff and blah blah blah, you can use this exact pedal to do the thing that is happening in the juggernaut, right? Because it has some different modes. It has two loops, right? It has an input and an output, 2 sends and 2 returns, and you can put an distortion or fuzz pedal into loop A, and you can put this, you know, a single patch cable between a send and return B, and you can mix with these knobs in parallel the affected and the clean signal. It has a different modes. You can switch between the A loop and bypass, B loop and bypass, and blah blah blah. But it makes it really useful, and there's plenty of options. I think there's an electro-harmonics pedal that does this kind of stuff and many more. There's another one from Earthquaker Devices, and you know, there's a lot of pedals. You'll find many options that will let you experiment with that. I recommend you as a bass player to get one of these or any other companies, and that will help you, you know, experiment with many different pedals without worrying about, is that a guitar one, or is it for bass, or I will lose low end, or blah blah blah, you know, and you know, and you'll get more focused into making musical things and getting creative and, you know, that stuff. So, well, this is it for all. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I wish Marcel, you know, to recover and get better soon, and hope you guys see you again on the next show. Thank you. See you.